Okay, class, we wet our paper and did a light yellow wash everywhere on our lizard that we saw the yellow around the mouth, around the eyes, some of these little, I don't know, they're not fins, but they're spikes on the back, the inside of the legs, the back inside, a little bit on the tummy, and we got our yellow in. So that's just a wet into wet wash. I wet the paper, added that yellow in, and now we're getting started with the next phase. And I'm actually just going to jump right in to his eye, and you can see that it's very yellow. Look at your reference photo. It's available to you in your email to your parents, and we're just going to get started with that. So I have a little bit of water into the greens that I have. This is sap green, and then this is hooker's green. So you can put that anywhere you wish. Since it's right here, I'm going to get rid of a little bit of this red color that's in this square, so I can mix my greens in there. And I'm just going to get a little bit. I have my small brush. If you don't have a small one, just make sure you stay up on point in order to do all of your line work, because it's very little. And I'm going to put in the green that is underneath the eye in this area, and we're just going to kind of build up the colors that we see there. So we're going to just put in some green all along this bottom part of the eye. Right here coming out on both sides, it's going to be brown. So if you get a little green in there, that's, you know, that's no big deal. Brown is going to be darker, so you're going to cover over it when you do the darker parts. We always try to work from the lightest colors to the darkest colors. So I'm just putting in these lighter greens at first, and then we have to kind of let that dry. So we're going to move on to his mouth area. So we're just going to drop down into here. And as you can see in the reference photo, there is a light green underneath the chin, and then it gets darker. So we're going to have to put the light green in first. This is our sap green. And we're just kind of blending that into the surface of the paper. And then there is a light above his head as well. This is just very pale washes, guys. So we're going to come in up above his, I guess it's a nostril. Yes, right here, there's a nostril. There's a few little dark parts, so we can just go over those because we're going to make them darker. And we're just kind of building up layers of color, and we're not putting a whole lot of color onto the paper, so it dries fairly quickly. And now I'm going to add just a touch of yellow to that green, so it's even more yellow green than it was before. And I'm going to put this right in this section, so it's brighter, coming down to the mouth. And then we're going to soften, and you can actually just pick up a touch of yellow in order to soften that green into a more of a yellow space. We're going to go behind the eye, which is brighter again. So it's our yellowed green color all the way around. And we're just building up the base layer of the colors on our lizard. So don't worry about shadows at this point. You're just worrying about highlights and any whites that might be there along your lizard. Now I'm going back to just sap green, coming around this, honestly don't know what it is. It's a part of our lizard. So Might be an ear, not sure. Look at your reference photo and you will see that. Then it goes to yellow-green here and coming down the chest and the arm a little bit. Then we're going to pick up our sap green and move that on out. Blend it in with the yellow on the top. You could actually just go ahead and add that in if you wanted. Just kind of, the tips need to be yellow, but the bottom half can be kind of a yellowish green. So this is a very small brush to be doing this because I thought I was jumping into the eye, but we are going to come back to it pretty soon. So I am going to switch over to a number 10 round. I usually use the 8s in class. They're like my favorite size. And so I'm just softening that green into the body so I can go back to the eye. Now we're going to go to the darker green, and I'm going to use just a little bit of the Hooker's green in with the sap green. If this is too bright of a green, you can always, add a little blue to it, tone it down. And there are teeny tiny little lines, excuse me, in his Too Wet. Wow, way too much. Here we go. In his eye area, in these tiny, tiny little lines, you can do as many of those as you'd like. You don't have to do them all, but you're just barely touching your brush to the surface of the paper. And what this is like, there's an eye ring here, and then here, and then here it kind of is coming up. So we're just putting those little rings in. They are a darker green. And there's a little shadow green up here on the top. And then just clean water. You're going to touch that edge and blend it over. And then there's a darker green on the second row as well. So hopefully you drew out all these little rows of your eye. And there is definitely some brown shading into that area as well. And we'll get to that once this green has dried. And then we're going to just touch those colors and bring them around to soften those out. Hope y'all can see what I'm doing. There we go. And then I'm going to get burnt umber, which is kind of a warmer brown, like anything that's burnt is going to have a little touch of red to it. So we're going to put in a little bit of the burnt umber into the eye and into the creases. And it goes right in here, up to the eyeball itself. It's not like a perfect straight line either. So, make sure you're making it go outside of there. And then the front of the eye, I'm going to water down that that brown just a little bit so it's not as dark. And in the front of the eye, it's almost like there's an iris, and then the rest of this is black, except for this little highlight. And this is the time I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of the burnt umber into that green. And there is a tiny little bit smaller than that. So I'm just going to soften that into the curves of the eye. And in the back, now I have a really dark gray mixed here. What I've done is I've taken a little bit of the brown, and then I've come to my ultramarine blue, and you're taking a little bit of that and mixing it in with the brown, and you're going to get this kind of neutral tone. It's almost a army green tone, since we use the burnt, and then we're going to water that down just a hair so that it becomes a lighter neutral tone, kind of a grayed color. And we're going to use it as our mouth color. And you're just following along that line that you drew to the back. And then there's a little bit right in here. And then you can soften that out. That little spot right behind the mouth is actually white, so I'm going to lift that back out. I'm going to put just a touch of the yellow right next to that line. Kind of soften that line into the bottom part of the mouth. And then it goes into the lime greeny color. So we're just building up our layers of color on our lizard here. This little hole right here is actually a darker green. Oops, that's the same color green. We're softening that out. And then right in the dead center, it's almost black. So I'm going to pick up some of this neutral color and with hardly any water at all. So it stays as dark as I want it to be. And I'm going to just put that right into the little nostril area. I'm going to do the same thing for the eye. If you have black in your set, you know, feel free to use that. And there is a tiny little line on the bottom. Then this is the pupil part of the eye. So I'm definitely going to need to make that darker. So I'm taking from the actual paint, touching the paint part instead of bringing it water, and you'll notice that it is quite a bit darker. And we're going to slowly, following the lines that we drew, put in our pupil. I'm going to put a little bit of that dark color at the bottom of the iris part. This is definitely a lot darker. It comes right in here, and it's definitely dark. So we're starting to build up the colors that we see on the eye, around the mouth a little bit. And these outline lines from my drawing for the lips and stuff like that, you know, you don't really have to worry about that because the background is very dark around him. So those lines will be consumed into the background. On the next black thing, get a little bit more brown, a little bit more blue, is this little spot back here on his, I don't know, maybe it's an ear. It's just a spot on him. I probably should do a little bit more steady on the animals before we do them, so I can tell y'all some interesting facts. Kind of like what we do in class. This top part is also not absolute white, it's gray. So I'm just going to soften right next to that black and pull a little bit of that color up into this space, but not leave it, leave a little bit of it just completely white. I'm going to go ahead and add some green into the body, so I'm going to switch to a larger brush. And this is his body. Just kind of getting a idea of where he is and where the leaf is and where the shadows are and all. So we're going to put a little bit of this green. Just kind of give me an idea. I'm leaving a little bit of white, a little bit of yellow showing there. As we come around. And then this little part right here is the shadow of the other arm, so I can put some green in there if I want to. And then you don't want any harsh lines showing, so I'm just kind of softening that color a little bit along his tummy and chest. Back leg. This is a combination of the Hooker's green along with the sap green. As long as it's still wet, you can add color back into it. But if it's starting to dry, make sure you don't do that. And I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow, come into the front, soften that green out to be more yellow. Same along the back leg. This is very dry. You can hardly see any water, you know, on my fingers and stuff, so we're just softening those hard edges where it goes up into the toes. Down along the bottom. He's got some big feet, doesn't he? And outside of the body. Now we're probably going to need to do more layers in this, but it just kind of gives us something to work on. We're trying to get rid of just the white of the paper, and if you have some little streaky lines and stuff like that in it, don't worry, he's a lizard, he's full of scales. So we can just add those. We're going to be adding in more layers anyway. I think I am going to make it a little darker, especially along the bottom side here. Back side of this leg. Back side of this leg, and especially on the bottom. There's a little bit of shadow area in here. There's a shadow in his, from his scales here. We're gonna just kind of soften that into the other colors so there's not those harsh lines. If you have it wet enough, there shouldn't be any of the harsh lines. I swear, you know, everybody's at home and doing their staying home projects and all, but I tell you what, the military are flying like crazy all over around my house. So sorry if that's bothering any of you guys. It's very loud. I'm going to add in some of the yellow parts that come into this front foot. It's like he's leaning on his elbow here, and then this is these two are the leg that goes up over here. So I'm going to intensify that that yellow because it's the inside of his arm, which is more of a yellow tone than a green tone. And we're just going to add a little bit up there as well. And then we get to do our fun watercolor thing. Let's let this dry and we'll come back to the lizard. While we're waiting for that, I'm going to come into an area and I'm just going to water my tray here, this orange, because I'm not going to need it for this project, and clean it out so I can have a nice big space to make up quite a bit of our background color. And we're going to start off with a green. We're going to wash a light green all over the background and the leaf and everything. And then we're going to come back in with this blackish color on top of the green. If you want to do this, it's almost like the curved side of a leaf where it's lighter color, you know, feel free to put those things in. I didn't actually draw that particular one, but we could just do lines and then water out right there. So it's kind of, everything just needs to be like, you know, really out of focus. And you want to start in one area and end and not jump around your background too much when you start putting in the blacks. So we're just going to create quite a bit of this middle tone green color. And I'm using a filbert brush here. You can use a round, you can use, you know, whatever you happen to have. And but I am going to need to wet it first. So I'm going to very carefully wet my paper. Really watch where the edges of your foreground are, which is the leaf he's on and of course him. And wet this background really well. Turn your head so you can see where the water is going. And this comes up around him. If your water is puddling in one area, you can always just kind of, you know, turn your paper. Follow him very carefully, because you don't want to get any of these background colors in the lizard. Now, since I'm going around this area, we probably should have already made up the darkest color for the background, which is going to be using the dark blues into the green and adding a little bit. You can add a little bit of the brown to make a nice black. If you have sepia or raw umber, one of the darker browns, then feel free to use that. I have paint in this brush, so I need to lay it down. I am going to run some of that water back down the other way. I know it's hard for you to see any of that, but it was really starting to collect water right here. And then we're just going to put in some of the green tones that we see. There's a little bit of yellow on this leaf, a lighter color, and then we can just drop in and let that kind of just meld together. If you want to make up some of your dark color while you're there, this is just the brown and the green, and you're going to go up underneath the leaf that's over there, kind of fan that into the green that you already have. Take your smaller brush when you get close to the lizard, and I'm putting color right next to him. And then I can take my smaller brush and go in between those spikes on his back. Don't know what they're called. Any of you guys that have that info, just put it in the comments. Whoops. Touched my finger right there. So you have to kind of make sure you don't put your hand down when doing this parts. So there are different colors next to him besides just this black. And there are some areas that are blacker than others. So we can come in with some of the green on top of that black and just kind of let it blend in. You just want this out of focus background that is like tree-like, you know, because he lives amongst the trees in the forest. Look at this beautiful rainforest animal here. You got to work pretty quickly too, guys. Don't let your background dry out on you, or you're gonna have hard lines, or I got a little brown there, but that's okay. I think I'm actually going to switch to the smaller brush to go right alongside him, because I don't want to pick up the board and move it out of your viewing space. Going around his little lips. His head, that bump of the eye on the other side. Go slowly. I can come over here and pick up some of the greens and just go ahead and drop that in as well. It makes for interesting background to have all these colors kind of mixing and drying on the paper. And this area you can see is already starting to dry, so I can't add anything else over there. And right over here is where that more yellowish stripe, kind of almost a beige. So if you wanted to add it in, now would be the time. You can add some yellow into it. Just a little something in the background, not really sure even what it is. And this is some more of the black. And I'm going to pick up some more of the green, the two greens, mix them together, and put it alongside this leaf that he's sitting on, and then add the black to that. This is a ultramarine blue, and this kind of tells us how much brighter he needs to be, or any changes we need to make to him in order to have your background in. It does help, you know, to know how to make any adjustments to him. And this doesn't mean that the background's finished. This is just pretty much getting rid of the white of the paper so we can see how much we need to work on our lizard. Now some of these little points, I have just a touch of color, but I do not have hardly any water, so it's not going to bleed back up against the background that I just put in. And I'm just kind of refining a little bit of the shape of his head and the shape of those spikes. They are very pronounced, so I want to do the same thing. They are different sizes and thicknesses, so don't make them look like a rubber stamp, like each one of them is exactly the same. So you can look at the picture and see that some of them are longer, some of them are thinner, that kind of thing. Okay, well, I think I'm going to leave those, come back to them, readdress those, because this area is starting to dry. It is kind of bumped up there. And so we are going to stop for day 1 on our lizard. So you're going to print off your picture from the internet. You're going to transfer your drawing as best you can. Get in your background and let's get started a little bit on the lizard and his eye. And next week we'll finish up all of his little scales and this big leaf that he's sitting on and have ourselves a finished, beautiful picture. Take as long as you need to, guys, for this project. These are getting a little bit harder, so I want to make sure that you have plenty of time to complete all that you're doing. And please, 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 when you're finished, send me the pictures, because I can't wait to see them. It just brightens my day when everybody sends me their pictures. All right, guys, y'all have a wonderful day.